Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and presented by Rockpoint Bank and EPB. Rockpoint Bank, from Chattanooga for Chattanooga. And EPB, get EPB's fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Tim Moore. Tim is best known for his food blog and Instagram, Tim Eats. With nearly 14,000 followers, Tim is an influencer, curator, storyteller, and promoter of the local food scene. Tim, before we find out what college one has to attend to be an influencer, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Well, these days, usually anything that I'm eating or drinking, my 2-year-old is wanting what I'm having. So I have to split it with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't do a lot of caffeine these days, but I usually will have like some type of electrolyte drink or something in the morning and water and an allergy pill. So that's how I start my morning.
I think everyone in Southeast Tennessee needs an allergy pill.
Yeah. It's like part of my routine. Like it's like on the counter, grab it. Yeah. These days.
Yeah. Particularly when everything outside is that kind of lime green, just the air is.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not a coffee guy?
Oh, I definitely am a coffee guy. I can only just handle so much caffeine. But some days, we've got a 1-month-old at home, so one days it calls for it.
Yeah.
I love a good cold brew with whole milk that we make at home. Or if I'm out and about in between meetings, love to swing by one of my favorite coffee shops and just get a shot of espresso just to keep the day up.
Yeah. And my dirty little secret is I gave up caffeine a few years ago. So I drink decaf coffee, and I can't tell the difference in the two, except maybe energy. Thank you for being here. Know a bit about your food blog, and I think most people know you from Tim Eats, and we want to talk about that and how you got to doing that, and also what you do professionally, to support yourself and your family. But really want to start out, as I tell everyone, where we start is the beginning. You're born and raised in Cleveland.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Born and raised in Cleveland. Very much like 90s kind of suburban childhood. Yeah. Grew up there and, thought, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later, but thought I would stray a lot farther from the nest than I did and had, sort of those early 2010s West Coast Portland, Oregon type of dreams, and ended up doing some internships in Chattanooga when I was in college, and I just was like, oh, the city that's like right in my backyard is like the perfect place to be, and it was never a question after that.
It's a good fit. So what did your parents do in Cleveland?
Yeah, my parents, my dad worked in retail management, and my mom has worked for the same optometrist office for almost the past 30 years.
Well, that's kind of the cool thing about Cleveland, because my wife grew up in Cleveland, is it has more of that Mayberry feel of the people working in professionals' offices and things like that, and people you just know from the community. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 younger siblings.
Yeah.
Both still in Cleveland.
And what do they do?
My sister, she works for the Bradley County Courthouse, and she works in social services role there. And then my brother, he's actually a great video editor, and we're talking about maybe working on some projects together, which is fun.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about growing up in Cleveland. Were you Bradley or were you a Cleveland High School or what's the other school?
Walker Valley.
Walker Valley. God.
Yeah. It's funny, because you were saying your wife's from Cleveland. Cleveland does have a very distinct feel. Were you in the city schools or the county schools? Because I hardly knew anybody that went to city schools. I grew up on the north end of the county, so I did North Lee, Ocoee Middle, then Walker Valley.
And Walker Valley was probably pretty new when you went there too, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely at the time.
Did you do any sports or recreation or extracurriculars while you were in high school?
I was really into music during high school. Soccer was my middle school obsession, and it was funny because I because of that, skipped the opportunity to join band. But when I got into high school, I got really into the idea of playing drums and playing on the playing in the marching band on the snare line. But they were so good, and I was miles away from being good enough to do that. But it kind of piqued my interest in music, and I started playing drums in a in a band with some buddies. We're still super close to this day. And then I remember I kept chickening out, trying out every year for drumline, and finally came time junior year to try out for senior year. And I went and talked to the band directors. I was like, I have to try. This
Yeah.
is the whole reason I started playing drums. So I tried out, completely bombed, but they were like, well, you seem like you've got a lot of passion. Our baritone section needs some warm bodies, and maybe you'll figure out how to play it by the time the season picks up. So I picked up the baritone that summer and played in marching band just my senior year of high school, just to say I did it.
Yeah.
And I had a blast.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
What does that teach you, though? Is that a big discipline thing? Because I look at marching bands, and it looks like those folks work a heck of a lot harder than the football team.
I can't speak for the full team, but it was a lot of work. The band camp and grueling summer, and it's very much a discipline. It's very much about precision, like where you're stepping, how you're stepping. And it was
while you're playing an instrument.
While you're playing an instrument, which is funny because I learned it over the summer kind of on my own, but more so when I was in camp, and I was just gradually figuring out like finger placements and how to play notes. And so at first I was faking it those first few weeks, but by the time football season started, I was actually able to start playing along with some songs. And then by the end of the season, I could play them all the way through. So it was a great learning lesson, and fake it till you make it, because that's literally what I was doing.
Now, when you say you were faking it, so you're in the band, are you just pressing the...
I was literally just doing this. I was just
Hell,
thinking about
that.
Yeah, I was thinking about where I could step, and I would play the parts I could play. And it was really kind of hilarious about that whole thing. But that experience meant a lot to me for a lot of reasons. And I remember at the end of that for senior year, they had people write essays about what being a band meant to you. And our band director, it's so embarrassing, but I laugh at it now, invited me on stage and said, well, Tim was in the band the shortest amount of time and wrote the longest essay. So if that tells you about kind of the type of person I was during that time.
So what was it you wrote that you got out of band that really got the attention of your band director?
I feel like it was really just about being a part of something. It was a big band. It was like a 250 person band, but just like being a part of something, the discipline of it, I took it very seriously, probably too seriously sometimes. But a lot of times we were marching into a field, everybody's like chit-chatting, and I would just be like, just like stoic, like looking forward, carrying my instrument. So I don't know. I think there was it was really one of the first times in probably high school that I felt like, oh, I feel like I'm really a part of something, and had great friends through it. And the only thing I would have changed would have been to do it longer, but it is what it is.
You mentioned you formed a band with some buddies, and you're still buddies today. Are you still playing?
Not still playing. Drum sets are unfortunately difficult for, when you have limited space and kids, and they're loud. I'm sure my son would love to play on one, but I haven't had a drum set in a few years, but I picked up guitar along the way. I have a guitar, a banjo, a couple of other instruments. And, for the most part in the last few years, it's just been kind of playing for my own enjoyment, playing for my kids and that sort of thing. But,
what was the name of your band in high school?
It was called The Night Shines, and we were kind of a indie band that was very inspired by the music of that time that was particularly popular for millennial hipsters like us. So
Nirvana.
Yeah, not as grungy as Nirvana, but we were big into Oasis was a huge influence for us. And, at the time, bands like Arcade Fire was really popular, and other ones. So we took a lot of influences from that.
One of the things you said earlier was you always thought you would leave Cleveland and maybe go out west or something like that. Was that part of the influence of the music?
For sure. Yeah. I've talked about this recently with other people, and I'm like, I feel like people who graduated high school in around 2010, the dream was to go somewhere where, I don't know how to describe it. It was because I learned recently that Gen Z doesn't really have hipster culture the way that millennials did. It was the idea of going to places where you had really good coffee on every street corner, and it was kind of gray, everything was gray and green, and that whole aesthetic was really appealing. And it's
Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, like Seattle, Portland, like that whole Pacific Northwest. So I kind of had that like dream in my head, even though I'd never been there, like, oh, I'm going to move there and, find a job there. And, yeah, just took me on a different path.
So you're in high school, you're doing the band. Any other activities?
That was mainly it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
consuming enough. So when it comes time for college, what are your thoughts? Did you even look at going out west?
I didn't. So college, to be totally truthful, I was not a particularly amazing student. I was told by teachers I was smart and capable, but I never put my best foot forward in a lot of areas outside of these type of humanities classes, like English classes and
Yeah.
history classes. I always would thrive in those. So I was never super serious about school at the time. And so I went to community college just to kind of like take time, figure it out, didn't have to move out of the house. The community college was even closer to our house than my high school was, and was there for a couple years, and went in thinking I was going to be a science major, like all my friends that I was close with at the time and still close with, who are thriving in their fields. Discovered in calculus 1 that was not for me. Was a history major and pretty serious about teaching history, which I think I still would have loved. But then during that time, I was part of a college ministry who was putting on events just for
Mhm.
outreach to the local colleges. And I started putting on these like small music events at our college ministry house, like these acoustic coffee house type events. And the amount of planning and efforts I put into marketing these events greatly exceeded any efforts I was putting into school. Um, and I remember I had my mentor who was the director of that college ministry was like, Tim, like, have you thought about maybe like going into like marketing or PR or something like that? Really seems to make you tick. And I didn't even know it was a career option.
Yeah.
And so, short time later, finished at Cleveland State my time there and transferred to Lee University just across town, who had and still has, a great communications and PR program.
And I'm constantly impressed with Lee graduates because if you look at some of the folks who've come out of there, particularly on the communication side, and I can't remember Eric's last name at Whiteboard.
Hmm.
Um, uh, who's the other guy?
Eric and Taylor.
Eric and Taylor. Yep.
Mm.
And then did Rob Halderman
He
go to
did.
Cleveland?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. And I
or
kind of
Lee College.
yeah, and Rob had previously, before he founded his own firm, had worked at Life Care,
Yeah,
which was my first internship.
your first intern. Go back to talking about the doing the on campus promotion and and bringing in musicians. What does all that entail?
It's so funny because looking back, it probably was so simple and I made it way more complicated. But, at the time, I mean, it was like, I was reaching out to like local musicians in Cleveland and Chattanooga, asking if they would come play at our our ministry house that we had, which had this cool big open room. And I would get local coffee, what's the word?
Vendors,
Vendors, yes. I was thinking of people who like make the coffee beans, and I don't know why that roasters.
roasters. There you go.
Who would donate coffee to the event, and we would just like, and I would just put posters up and create. At the time, Facebook was still super relevant, creating
Mhm.
Facebook events and doing everything I could to fill up the room for these monthly
Did
music
anyone
events.
tell you how to do this, or was that just instinct?
Not really, no. And I did it with so much focus. And at the time, looking back on it, things I learned later was also like when things don't go well, how to be calm and how to progress forward. Like I think it taught me a lot about how to work through those challenges that come with doing events. At the time, being an 18-year-old, I can't say I always responded greatly.
Well, you're
But
18 too.
yeah, you got to learn somehow.
Well, you're 18, you're in college for the first time, and you've got this responsibility. I would imagine they said, "Here's the budget to do this," and you've had to make those things match up.
Exactly. Yeah. And we had no resources to do it. It was just all very grassroots.
Yeah. Did and that was just at Cleveland State, or did that continue at Lee?
Mostly while I was at Cleveland State. I think I did some while I was at Lee. I was still a part of that same college ministry group
Mhm.
because I served both Lee and Cleveland State. The timeline on what was happening when is a little blurry
Yeah.
now. But yeah,
And you majored in what at Lee?
public relations.
So when when you get out, what do you do?
Mm.
You said you go to life care.
Yeah, I did 4 internships in college. So I worked at Life Care, but really the one that was there was a couple of big, I would say, in the time, I didn't think so, but almost like life-altering things that happened. I did internship at River City Company,
Okay.
and that kinda started exposing me to what was happening in downtown Chattanooga.
What were you doing there?
Press releases, doing social media, little video projects, um, things to help promote the pavilion down there. Yeah, one of the funniest things I remember from that time was I worked on a project to help optimize the placement of the lights that they put on the streets at Christmas time. And they still do that exact same pattern. And I've like joked to my wife that like that's my legacy. Anything I've done since then hasn't topped that.
Well, and I'm sitting here thinking, I just never would have thought of doing a study to see the light patterns.
They had only so many lights, and they wanted to figure out if there was a better way to do them. And one of the things, I talked to the electrical utility company who helped do them, and they were like, well, instead of facing all the lights north and south, up and down Market and Broad Street, you should turn one of the ones on each light pole east and west so you can see them as you go through the cross streets. And they still do that pattern. It's so silly.
Never would have crossed my mind.
That's one project for some reason I'll never forget about. I think it's because I just drive through Chattanooga every year and think about that.
Yeah. So that was one of the internships. What other ones did you do in college?
So I'll try to make a quick story. I was at the time during that internship very determined to go work for like a major PR agency, like an Ogilvy. There was another couple that I was looking to in the Atlanta area, and I was like, the way to get jobs there was an intern there. And so I did an internship interview with a pretty big agency down there that spring and went through the interview process. I talked to one of their VPs who said I was going to be there that summer on his crisis communications team. And I just had this whole idea about like, I'm going to spend my summer in Atlanta. This is going to slingshot my career into working into big PR agency. It's coming together. And for whatever reason, I never heard anything about whether I got it or not. And it came to the point where I was like, I got to do something this summer. And so at the very last second, I applied for an internship at Blue Cross and spent a summer working full-time up there on Cameron Hill. And that was the summer that I spent a lot of more time here in Chattanooga because I wanted to avoid the 24 traffic.
Right.
So there were places I would start hanging out at, like the Bitter Alibi had just opened that summer.
Yeah.
And I started making friends just from just getting to know people and rubbing shoulders with them. And it was after that summer, I was like, I think I want to be in Chattanooga.
Well, go back to the Atlanta PR company and, for lack of a better term, getting ghosted by them. So you leave, you're talking to the VP or whatever, you're going to be on my team, and you never hear back from them. What's your initial reaction to that? I mean, was it devastation? Was it, I got to figure out something? Were you able to just move on to the next thing?
It was, well, for those weeks I was waiting to hear, it was ongoing anxiety and checking my email constantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it got to the point where I was like, I mean, if I get this internship, I got to find housing.
Yeah.
And I like, all these things. And yeah, it came to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to interview Blue Cross. And even still, I was kind of waiting to hear from the call. I think at that point, once I accepted the Blue Cross internship, I just wanted to get the call that said, I got it, even though I was going to have to turn it down. And I never did. So I think once things got moving at the Blue Cross, I moved on from that idea and thought, well, maybe next summer after I graduate or something. But it was over that summer I decided, I was like, wait, I think I kind of want to see what's going on here in Chattanooga.
And what'd you do at Blue Cross?
I was in the corporate communications department. So a lot of internal communications, it's like, I mean, their employee size is like talking to a small city. Yeah, for sure. And did a lot on their intranet, did a lot with internal events. We did a lot of work supporting executives. So got a lot of experience there.
But that got you in Chattanooga, and you mentioned you'd start hanging out at the Bitter Alibi and making friends. Is that where your desire or love of food or promoting food outlets came from?
I think it was definitely starting around that time. I mean, I think like there was a project. I remember distinctly a project I did in college around food and beverage where um, we had a local. You may be familiar with this place. It's called Gardner's Market
No, I'm
in
not.
Cleveland. It's in downtown Cleveland. It's been there for a few decades. The original couple who owned it sold it a few years ago after I did this project, but for the student newspaper, which I worked on at Lee, um, the first I approached them, I wasn't on staff. I said, I want to write an article about Gardner's Market and the couple who owns it just to figure out their story. And again, that was one of those extracurriculars, was not part of a class, that I put so much stress and worry and effort into doing that, and wrote that article. Of course, probably very much not AP style. I wasn't quite attuned to that at the time, nor sort of the newspaper style writing that you would see. And I remember seeing the final edit of it, almost read nothing exactly like I had written it, which I was a little devastated by. But I think there was something starting to tick there at that time. And yeah, and like coming to Chattanooga from even not that far of a place like Cleveland, having places where young people hung out at bars and stuff like that, that was just like completely new to me.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
And in writing that article, and I know one of the things you had said earlier about taking the humanities classes, you realized you like storytelling.
Mhm.
How much of what you were pursuing in college and some of the internships and some of the jobs you thought would be your career, did you not realize that you could make a living storytelling?
Yeah, it was like there were elements of that throughout it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't really clicking at the time that was that
Kind
that
of
was
flashing up there.
exactly. It was like all the signs were there that I was going to do something in this space, but it just wasn't really clicking for me at the time. I think I was kind of just like young and very much like, taking each step as they came and not really thinking about what could this turn into, what may I be doing a few years from now. I just kind of did all these internships and like I just experience in different sectors and try things on.
So you get done with Blue Cross, and what's next?
From there, this is also kind of a big career shift. I had gotten sort of introduced to people who worked around Lamppost Group at the time. And for those who maybe are relatively new to Chattanooga, Lamppost Group sort of predated, at the time, Bellhop was a big part of that, Ambition, Fancy Rhino. I would say the closest iteration you see to that now is Brickyard,
Yep.
which is a lot of the same people involved. But Sign Lamppost Group was incubating people at the Lubman's building, and I got an internship that I did that fall and spring, and my interest started to grow toward startups and entrepreneurship. And so I did a number of communications, marketing related, tasks and projects for them.
So you'd work with the companies that were incubating in there and help them with their PR, their communications and things like that.
Exactly.
How important was that exposure to that environment? Because at the time in Chattanooga, that was very unique. The Lamppost Group was really just doing something no one else had really done in Chattanooga, and bringing in companies like Bellhop, who started in Auburn, Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, to come here. What did that exposure mean for you?
Well, it was extremely energizing and exciting. I remember, like, not that it was about how it made me feel, but I remember like talking to friends about it and, who were in school and them being like, I've never even heard of anything like this. That kind of whole startup culture, I think, was really kind of taking off at that time. And so I think for me, it was like, oh, here's this whole new world I didn't even know existed that I could work in. It wasn't, coming from a place like Cleveland, you have more legacy companies, a little bit more, what was the phrase you used? Mayberry.
Oh, maybe.
A little bit of that. So being in this space that was chaotic at times, but also, very fast moving, things were happening all the time. I think it was like for, a 21-year-old,
Yeah.
super exciting. And I was like I felt pulled toward that type of energy for sure.
So you're seeing these storytelling signs, and then you get in this environment of entrepreneurship. Did it all start to come together for you through that?
Yeah, I think I knew that like something in the entrepreneur space was like what I wanted to
Uh-huh.
do. And so I worked there that fall and spring. And then the summer after I moved immediately to Chattanooga when I graduated, worked at Lamppost Group for a couple more months. And then it was time to look for like that first
That first professional job.
post college quote
Yeah.
unquote adult job. And I had been a part of the very first startup week in 2014 through my internship with Lamppost Group and gotten connected with the people at Colab. And so when they knew I was on the job market, we had already worked together, built some rapport, and they kind of approached me about
That's
coming
nice.
and creating a position. And then that was the next 5 years of my life.
And what was that position?
It started as a communication coordinator position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of writing newsletters, a lot of doing social media, a lot of press writing to support their communications director.
Mhm. And what did that evolve into?
Oh man, over the years, it evolved into so many things. You know, we were growing, we went through some leadership changes, we built new programs. Eventually, I basically became a communications manager who was leading most of the communications efforts for the organization. But we also started to add in some programs, like we started a consumer goods accelerator while I was there. And so for a couple of years, I was, just because of my interests in food and beverage, kind of de facto fell into a position of helping manage that program and helping facilitate it and bringing in mentors and helping with the recruitment process and the reporting process for all that. And then also helped project manage Startup Week, which was kind of full circle for a couple of years. My last one was 2020 when we had to do fully remote, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. So, Startup Week's always been a big deal, but then all of a sudden COVID hits. What do you do?
Yeah, that was a big question. I know a lot of like companies and organizations were saying, do we do fully remote? Do we just sort of hold off and see what happens? And we were like fully prepared to, well, not prepared, but fully willing to go through with it no matter what was going to happen. So yeah, we worked with, I remember Soundforce, who at the time had set up a whole sound stage in their warehouse and did all these events completely remote. And yeah, that was a crazy experience. And I think it was funny enough, after that, I think I started to say, I think I'm ready for a change of scenery.
Because you'd done it 5 years, right?
I've been there for 5 years. I was, nonprofit space is, I have so much experience I got from it, but I was trying to figure out what the next step of my career would look like. Yeah. And I had a hard time seeing that. It's like, do I stay in nonprofits? Do I try to go work for like a small business or a startup? And I had become connected with the people who had started Proof toward my end of my time at Colab. And I've known Mike Robinson since, for 10 or 11 years. Yeah. Worked for Tiffanie at Lamppost Group, right. His wife. And so I was like, talk to Mike, and it just seemed like a natural fit. They were building food and beverage programming over there at Proof. They were helping coach food and beverage entrepreneurs, both in restaurants and the CPG space during the height of COVID. And it was really around that time that I had really shifted away from, I don't think I see myself being in tech. I think I want to work more in the food and beverage space. And it just seemed like the perfect fit.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because you're getting all this experience with the Lamppost Group and everything, and that's identified as entrepreneurial in tech. But you got this food and beverage pulling you over here as an interest. Does that go back in your family? Was that something you grew up with, or just something that was a natural interest once you started meeting people in the industry?
It didn't come from a particularly entrepreneurial family. Came from people who very much worked, maybe of that generation who, worked at jobs for a few decades that provided stability, and among other things. But for whatever reason, and I kind of think back to my school years, there's something about me that's always been a little unconventional about
Yeah.
what I'm interested in. And that's not to make me sound cool or anything like that. That's just how my brain has worked. And so I think I was drawn to the uncertainty and just the variation of your day to day of entrepreneurship and sort of the passion and energy that comes behind all that. And so there's just, yeah, I can't pinpoint it to an exact, point in childhood, but it kind of makes sense looking back on, where I would chase these projects and these extracurriculars with full vigor and not always be the best student about through your
Right.
subject classes. Yeah,
More
there's
hands-on.
exactly more hands-on.
How about taking it a little deeper, the food and beverage interest? Because food and beverage, or people who own restaurants, start restaurants around us, I don't think get enough credit as being entrepreneurs. And
Agreed.
and and that may be the most difficult entrepreneurial path to take. Where did the food interest come from?
It's there was one thing in Cleveland I remember. So we actually had a location for it's been a staple here in Chattanooga for a long time and just changed ownership. But with Conga Cafe, Conga Kitchen had a location in Cleveland, and the matriarch of that family, I can't remember her name, but she was the one who had founded it, and here in Chattanooga, she worked that Cleveland location every day, and I remember being one of the few regulars because it never quite took off in Cleveland. But I never had food like it. Coming from a place that typically had more Tex-Mex than anything. And it was like I never had a pupusa and all the little fixings that come with it. And I remember just like learning a little bit more about her and her family and what they were doing. And I just was like, I just felt drawn to
Mhm.
that story and that hard work. And so again, these are the things that like I wasn't like, I'm going to work in food and beverage one day, but at the time there was a deep
Interesting.
appreciation for it for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And so I would say, a lot of that appreciation for me for food and beverage was definitely getting to work with some food and beverage businesses during, early COVID, but just being here in Chattanooga and the amazing blossoming food scene we've had.
It's
And
changed tremendously.
exactly, yeah. And spending, I'm very much one of the we hear that term like, third places or third spaces. Like I very much have my places I love to go to and get to know the people behind the counter. And I've just always just like found to your point, like they're very underappreciated. It's a very hard business to go into. There's a ton of risk. And I think people who succeed in food and beverage for more times than not have to be driven by a deep passion for not only food, but serving people and the hospitality element of it. So there's just it's hard sometimes to pinpoint, but there was something that I just felt naturally called to be in these spaces.
So you've got the marketing communication background at this point. Did you go out on your own with your own marketing company, or what do you, I guess better question, what are you doing now?
Great question. So when I was working at Proof, I remember after about a year of working there, I had some friends who had businesses, mostly food and beverage, a couple of like retail businesses who were like, "Hey, we need some help with our marketing. Like we've done all we can. We've done a decent job. We're ready to grow. We need somebody who can bring some expertise, but also some capacity to do this, like own our marketing. But we can't afford to bring on anybody full time. We're talking about, a few hours a week." And so I started doing this for a couple of businesses, and I did it for I brought another one, and then I was like spending my evenings and my weekend doing that on top of the work I was doing at Proof. And I remember like talking to my wife one day, and I was like, I think I can do this as a business. Just basically having multiple. I didn't even look at them as clients, but I almost looked at them as like it's like having multiple part-time jobs
Yeah.
where I'm partnering with these businesses and giving them capacity and knowledge and expertise and
You're like a fractional marketing director.
exactly, exactly. And so we talked about it, and she was like, I was like, if I can go and talk to my clients and get them to commit a little bit more to our partnership, I think I have enough where I can piece something together. And so that was the plan, put my notice of proof. A few weeks later, I had essentially like a full-time workload, sort of lined up. I mean, it didn't all come super easily. And I just, yeah, I haven't turned back from that. There's been a lot of changes, but I've been doing that for 4 years now, which is wild to think I've been doing this long enough to get like a college degree.
Yeah.
It's flown by, but it's evolved and I've learned a lot through the process. But I've still very much mostly stayed in the food and beverage space. And that's where I feel I can drive the most success. That's where I feel like I'm, you know,
Well, and someone who's a little bit older than you, quite a bit older than you, you've done the right thing. You've narrowed your focus, and you're not trying to be all things to all people. What's the name of your company?
I'm considering changing it, but it's been called Collision Marketing.
Okay.
It was actually, that's a name that goes back to a side project I was working on during college. That kind of made sense for my business.
What's the story?
I was in college. I had, again, being the type of like seeking out hands-on experience. I had gotten this kind of small group, but very enthusiastic students together with me to figure out how we could basically build like almost an IDEO type of model where college campuses could put people from different focuses, different study areas, and work on business projects and community projects together, like hands-on experience. And, there was going to be a co-working element. We had all these dreams. We had like whiteboarding sessions at my apartment. And at the time, collision was a bit of a buzzword in the startup space. And that was sort of the name that we put on it. And it never materialized. But that was definitely, I think, part of my like seeking out was like that real world, tangible experience.
Bringing everyone together. If I can ask, what are you thinking about changing it to, or do you know?
Well, it's funny. We talked at the very beginning about, what I've been up to the last year and a half. It's embarrassing to say, but I'll be at the grocery store and somebody will say, "You're Tim Eats." Oh, hey, are you Tim Eats? And like, people don't know my last name. It's just Eats now. And
it's not Eats?
It's surprisingly not. And so I've thought about doing something a little bit more along those lines, because that's just sort of,
you got the branding.
That's the brand that I built for myself almost unintentionally.
Well, and that's a perfect segue. Let's start talking about Tim Eats, and just full disclosure for you, I'm a foodie. I grew up working in the restaurant business through high school and college. Loved to cook. Been married nearly 40 years. I've cooked almost every meal. My wife cooks a lot of meals. She's going to get mad at me, particularly for our kids when they were small. But talk about how you decided to do that and why you decided to do that.
Being on the side where, working with restaurants, I would go on social media and see what were people saying about local food. And it's funny because in a year and a half's time, it's exploded. There's now a number of people doing a great job talking about local food. But going back a couple of years ago, there was very limited amounts. There weren't really that many local content creators who were talking about things happening here in Chattanooga. And I remember talking to my wife about that, and she was like, "Well, you have all the skills. You should do that." And I was like, "No, I shouldn't do that." And she was like, "But you're passionate about it. You've got the skill set. You could put together social content. Like, what's stopping you?" And I just didn't see myself being, going in, camera in my face, all this stuff. I was like, I don't know. It gave me the ick, And I sat on that for like a year. And then I saw a couple people in different cities, specifically one in Nashville and one in New York City, and who were talking about local food in a way that felt a lot less sort of like, look at me as the content creator, but more so like putting them in the spotlight.
Focus on them, yeah.
Exactly. But still very much like, in a way that worked great for social media. And I went and talked to my wife. I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And so I remember a couple weeks later, I was sort of sitting on that idea, and I went to a Creative Mornings where David Cook spoke, who's the founder of Food is a Verb.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is an amazing, more photo and written word driven food media outlet. And he was like, we need more people talking about local food. Like, he was like, said it with conviction. And I was like, okay, I've been sitting on this idea. I have to do it. And I was so terrified to do it. So I started putting out a couple of videos at the end of 2024. And
Do you remember the first one?
yes, I definitely do. Yes, I do remember the first one because I did it with
Talk about it.
yeah, well, I did it with my friend Khaled from Calliope, who I've had so much respect for him as a chef. And
Calliope's done great.
Yeah,
Great recognition.
absolutely. And so I thought, he's going to be great. He has such a great story and passion. And now looking back, and I'm sure as anybody who's creating content like you all have, you look back and you go, oh, I see where I could have done this and this. And, I was interviewing him in this weird low light situation where I'm holding my phone super low. And I was like, wow, yeah, how far I've come even in a short amount of time, and there's still room to grow. But yeah, and he agreed to do it because like, I just need a friend who can do this with me because I have no idea what I'm doing, and you'll be patient enough to get that. And so did those first couple, and kind of figured it out. Yeah.
So what was your original intention when you decided to do Tim Eats? Obviously put the focus on the local restaurants and the local food scene, but was it to, was your intention to do one a week? I mean, what was your plan?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad at planning. But I definitely, yes, I was like, I'm going to do one a week for as long as I can. And I kept that up for a few weeks, but I was spending hours of personal time editing video and having a very young son. I was like,
people don't realize how hard that is to edit video or even edit audio. I mean, it's tedious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I kind of was like, I need to be a little bit more, what do I want this to be? Because it wasn't necessarily like, I wasn't going into it to make money. I wasn't going into it thinking, how is this going to play any role in my business or my future? And so I thought, well, I was like, I'm going to do this in a way where it feels sustainable for me, where I don't get burnt out on it and I can keep doing it. So it's kind of shifted and it's gone through seasons. I kind of like this year leading up to having our newborn and my business growing, I was like, I got to think of Tim Eats more in like seasons, like how, television works. Like you work on a season, it's there, it takes a break, it comes back, just because that was what I needed to do for this place in life that I'm in. I struggle sometimes, like I see other content creators going to the new restaurant that opens or that pop-up or that event, and I'm like, my time is so limited. And my evenings are very precious, especially having, young kids. And so I kind of just have to like accept that how I'm going to go about it is maybe different than I would normally envision or ideally like it to. But I think I've come to peace with that, and it's working okay.
Do you intentionally try to focus on some of the lesser known places or maybe the hidden gems as opposed to the grand opening that's getting a lot of attention or the one place that's getting all the buzz?
For sure. Yeah. And I've definitely featured, again, Calliope was not a no-name restaurant when I started.
Not at all.
No, and they definitely are now. But I definitely have tried to like find those, I could try to like when I'm looking for places to feature, I'm looking for of course, good food, so, recommendations from friends, Reddit, kind of trying to keep a pulse on things. But then also like good stories too. And by the time this airs, I'm sure this video will be out, but I just went and filmed a video at Ahi Peruvian in Collegedale. I don't think I'd even ever ate at any restaurant in Collegedale, but this was my first one and went out there just because I was curious about their story and who they were. They've been there for, gosh, I think almost 15 years. and learned about them and had great food, but also had great connections I made through it.
You don't just show up. You reach out to them, set up an interview, tell them what you're doing. So just walk through that process.
Yeah, yeah. So I always reach out, find a time we can schedule. I don't like to be too sneaky about it, but I'm like, hey, I'll email them, we'll find a time, and I'm like, most of the time I'm texting because restaurant owners are not always the best about email. So we're texting. I'm like, okay, I'm going to come in. Here's kind of what to expect. And I'll talk about, we're going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes doing an interview, asking questions. And I want to get some B-roll. I want to see you in action. I want to get it in your kitchen if you're comfortable. Some shots of you, making plates, serving customers, all that sort of thing. So there's definitely like, a couple of weeks worth of communications usually ahead of that.
And you're not doing reviews. Or are you doing reviews, like grading the restaurant?
I'm not doing reviews personally. I know that there are plenty of people, and there's somebody locally who's doing a great job creating content more about reviews. For me personally, I just feel like I want to make people feel a little bit more curious.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell them the experience they'll have based off of mine.
That's a great point. Let them decide for themselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had people ask me like, have you ever featured a place you didn't like? And the answer is actually no. I have gone with intention to film a couple times and ended up not going through with it because I just didn't feel quite that I could endorse the experience that was had.
Because your name's on it to a great degree.
Exactly. But I also don't want to tear anyone down either at the same time. But, I've had food that I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good, but had a great story behind it. But then somebody else could see that video go in and have an amazing experience. Yeah. So again, I don't want to try to define that for anyone.
Do you keep Tim Eats separate from your marketing company?
It's funny. This is one of the rare times I talk about both. Talk about both.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And the only reason is like, I'll share this. Like, I never go into a business and go, hey, I'd love to make a video about you. I always tell them like, it's a passion project, it's free of charge. I don't go in there and then I go, hey, by the way,
I got this going on.
I kind of stick my elbow out to them and be like, hey, by the way, I've got this like,
I've done this for you.
Yeah, I've got this small business marketing company because I don't want them to I don't want to treat it like it's a bit of a bait situation. I'm like, I want to keep that separate. Have I had conversations come up organically and worked with people as a result of it? Yeah, I have. But that was never my goal.
It sounds a lot like what we do. Same thing, because I do a little marketing communications, but this is a passion project. Do you monetize Tim Eats?
No, pretty much everything I do is like, I don't even expect or ask a free meal or anything like that.
So it's purely passion driven.
Exactly.
The other thing I'm curious about is, how long ago did you start? 4 years ago?
The business, yes.
No, you're Tim Eats.
Tim Eats just about a year and a half ago, into 2024.
And you're already up to nearly 14,000 followers. How do you do that?
It's funny because I see how other people grow, and it feels quite slow. When you, in comparison to someone
14,000 feels quite slow.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Web Chats, Shayna, she actually interned for me at Proof, and she has exploded. She also is a Lee grad, a few years younger than me, but when I look at how committed and how great a job she's done, I'm like, wow, I feel slow comparison to that. But yeah, I was honestly growing to that. I just kind of found that like, if I stayed true to myself and didn't necessarily try to, I think there's a great temptation to be doing what's trendy, to fall into certain formats and do those things. And there's nothing wrong with those, but I just felt like being that sort of like trendy, vibey food content influencer wasn't me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how it would be received to be more interview content and a little bit more behind the scenes and a little bit more story driven, maybe a little bit longer than you would typically see on the algorithm. But I remember I did one video about David from Hanmi, and I did another one about Larry, of Uncle Larry's. Yes. Fish so good it will slap you, And I did those two videos shortly after I started the project, and those videos blew me out of the water.
Really?
The way that they reached people and the interest that people took in not me, but those restaurants.
Right.
But some of those videos, it was crazy the amount of followers that they drew. And everybody wants to say, I always say, I don't care about the numbers. But let's be any content creator, you post, you're looking at
Of
your
course you are.
engagement. You're looking at your follower count. It's true.
Yeah. You said something earlier about, there's a lot of content creators now and everyone wants to be an influencer, but staying true to yourself and not that's such a huge advantage if you can focus on that and execute it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's sometimes one of the hardest things for me is seeing. I think it's that competitive aspect is you see what other people are doing and they're doing such a great job at it, or they do something that's so simple that gets so much engagement. You're like, I'm over here chipping hours away at editing a video, and you don't always get the results you want. It's not that I feel jealous. It's just that, that natural sense of you just want to keep doing better. And so, but I've found ways to streamline how I produce and edit. I've gotten better over time.
Mhm.
And anytime that I feel like I've tried to stray away from that, it didn't feel like me, and maybe it didn't feel like me to other people either. So, yeah.
And all the editing you do, a lot of that self-taught?
Yes. Yeah. I took a media class in high school that we used Premiere Pro, and I know just enough about Premiere Pro to use it now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Get you through what you need to do.
Mhm.
I got a couple more questions for you. What's the future of Tim Eats as you see it?
Again, I'm such a bad planner. I'm definitely not inspiring anybody with this. Future Tim Eats, I really would like to do the type of thing I've done in Chattanooga across the Southeast, finding more stories. I'm always going to be Chattanooga based. This is always going to be home. I'm always going to talk about what's happening here. But I really, in terms of food media, I think there's so many stories to be told, just in cities within a quick drive away or places in between here in those cities. And so that's something I'm gradually working toward is how do I do more of that? How do I grow that? But, I've spent time in Nashville and Knoxville and Atlanta and, these small towns in between. I just did a video about Wardlaw's Barbecue, which is an hour away in Lafayette, Georgia.
It's supposed to be pretty good.
It's delicious.
Is it?
It's so good.
See, I grew up in Memphis, so I'm a barbecue snob. And everyone tells me you haven't tried Wardlow's, so go try it.
It is great. I've not been to Texas. I cannot compare it to
Texas isn't barbecue. It's brisket.
Oh, that's gonna rile some people up. But no, I'm kidding.
And my daughter and son-in-law live in Austin, and he's a Texas grad, so he'll get it.
Oh, for sure, sure. Yeah. So, but it is. It's not only great barbecue, but Robert, who's the proprietor, is just an amazing guy. Well, and I think that's part of the experience.
And that's what I wanted to ask you is there a type of story, a type of business that resonates more than the other, or is it just you finding the right story for that business?
I think it's finding the right story for that business. I really do love, again, I support and have a ton of respect for the newer, sometimes even I hate to say flashy because I don't want that to sound like a negative thing, but when the Neils open a restaurant, they are the top of their game in town, and I have tremendous respect for them, and I love all their restaurants. What I love to feature in addition to highlighting places like that, like we were talking about, is finding the stories about the hole-in-the-wall places, or maybe somewhere that's been around 20 years and you don't really know how it came to be. I remember early on, who the first person I thought I really want to interview was Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce from
We've had Bruce on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's great.
Bruce from River Street Deli.
Bruce
I
Weiss.
think he was the first name that came to my head, but I was like, I got to figure this out. Then I'll go talk to Bruce. And just getting to hear his whole life story that led him to opening a deli here in town. That type of stuff just keeps me so excited and makes it hard to go to sleep when I am working on a video like that.
And I think one of the attractions of that for you and for the people, whether they're listeners or watching, is people like to discover things that they don't think that other people know about. So finding those hole in the walls or the Bruce Weiss story that no one really knew or anything like that really resonate to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Before I get to the last question, Tim, I want to remind our listeners who makes My Morning Cup possible. And it's a big thank you to our presenting sponsors, EPB and Rockpoint Bank. Get EPB fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet, and Rockpoint Bank, your local banking partner, your business, your bank, your future. Now, this might be a little bit of an unfair question for you because you're so much younger than me, but what would you tell that 25-year-old Tim Moore is important for a happy life?
I think being very intentional and present in as much of everything that you do, your time with your family, your time with your coworkers, or the people that you work with. I think that like being present, slowing down, calming your brain down a little bit is something that is like so important. And to not like, I think these days, it may be harder now than when I was in my early 20s about being living, sucked into our phones and the digital world that we have sort of adjacent to us. Like, there's lots of good stuff on there, but there's also so much happening in real life. And I think some of my most meaningful experiences, and I think it's a big reason I'm drawn to food and beverage, could be the conversation you have with someone sitting next to you at the counter or at the bar or across the counter from you. I think to me that is part of what's made living here in Chattanooga so enriching and so special. And so I would tell that yourself, like, just soak all that up, do all of it, and be present, and also be, like I mentioned earlier, like I've taken a lot of these sort of maybe not that unconventional in comparison to other people, but at least me and my background, a lot of unconventional paths and a lot of unconventional interests. Would be to just like lean into who you are, and like it's okay to feel drawn to these stories and all these things, and just be comfortable in your own skin. That's something I would tell myself.
That's a great message, because we all grow up with expectations, and the expectations for you may not fit what you really enjoy and what you're really good at, and being able to say, no, do you know what? I want to go on this path. It might be unconventional, but it works for me.
It sounds like, not that I'm trying to tie Tim Meats back into it, but I always say Tim Meats is, and I think it's who I try to be as a person, Tim Meats is very much about curiosity and not about expectations. And I very much try to push that in the content. Like, I want you to be curious to come and experience this for yourself, and keep your eyes open to what may happen for yourself, and taste something new that maybe either tastes familiar, resonates with you, or is completely new altogether. And not go in with those expectations that somebody else maybe help set for you. I very much tried to do that in my own life in a lot of ways.
That's a great way to put it. For someone who doesn't know how to find Tim Eats, where can they find it?
Best place would be go to Instagram and just type in Tim_Eats. I should pop up there. I have 3_ after Eats as well. I'm also on TikTok trying to get that up to date, and so that there are going to actually be things happening across both those platforms. It's also Tim_Eats_ there. And you can always send me a message if you want to chat or have ideas, or whoever. I love to talk to new people.
Well, I tell you, I've enjoyed this, Tim, and I admire what you're doing and wish you even more success.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Mike.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Constant Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.